Hey everybody, and welcome again to Time Extend. My name is Adam Ismail, and as always, I am joined today with...
Brendan Rorison, and today we've got two featured topics for you guys. Firstly, we'll be discussing the newly released Team Sonic Racing, followed by a look at the latest grid game that's just been announced. It's been a bit of a busy week, hasn't it, Adam?
It has, after weeks of mostly us covering old games, or talking about old games because there really wasn't much new coming out, we were treated to the new Team Sonic Racing that had been delayed, and it's nice that we finally get the chance to play that. And then out of nowhere comes Grid, which I think that was like a Wednesday or Thursday when that was announced, and I couldn't believe it. I was just scrolling through Twitter, and it was like minutes after it was announced, and I saw somebody tweeting about it, and I was like, really? Like, finally? Yeah, so very exciting times, and yeah, I guess we should start with Team Sonic Racing, because we've been waiting to play that for so long. And I know, Brendan, you have been playing mostly the online, like doing some single races and getting into the online, right?
Yeah, that's where I've been kind of focusing all my time so far, purely because I was curious to see how busy it was, first and foremost, to see if many people were playing it, and just to see also how that's structured. And to be honest, like I'm really happy with how the game kind of separates casual and ranked play. But based on my time so far, it seems like most people are simply playing casual, and maybe that's to be expected with this type of racer.
Yeah, it's a kart racer, so I mean, I honestly would probably prefer the casual play, but it's nice that they give you the choice. And I think it's important to focus on the online aspect of the game, just because it's so heavily team focused. Like, I might not be as mindful of that when it comes to something like Mario Kart, but because from the get-go, the first thing we knew about this game was that it took a team approach to Sonic. Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah, definitely, and especially as someone who really loved Transformed, the kind of net code for that game and how busy the lobbies were, it kind of killed that element of the game, but it did have a lot of single player content to make up for that. I feel like Team Sonic Racing's more kind of evenly split in the sense that there is a good even amount of single player content, but I also feel as if in online mode they've got like specific race types and stuff you can only access on there by the looks of it. Perhaps they appear in the kind of story mode I've not managed to dig too deep into, but there's some good race types there that kind of change it up, and I've been finding pretty full lobbies, so I'm assuming that means the sales have been decent as well.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the game just came out, so it's good to see people are taking to it, and the fact that it's priced so cheaply. I don't know what it is in the UK, but here in the US it's $40, which is about $20 cheaper than a normal new game is, so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, same here, effectively. The kind of £35 mark seems to be the kind of the RRP, and that will entice a lot of people, especially because like Crash Team Racing's out next month, so there might be those that fancy a little hit before then. Difference here being, of course, Team Sonic Racing's a full new game rather than a remaster, so it's an exciting game. I mean, to kind of dial it back to the basics, how have you been finding the game then, from like a gameplay perspective? Have you been enjoying it?
Yeah, so I've mostly been playing the World Tour, and to be honest, I'm not super far into it, but I'm enjoying it. It's just, and this is less of a fault, I feel, of the game, of this game, and just more of a fault that it's following up Transformed. That I am enjoying it, but you know, Sonic and Sega All-Stars Transformed was so good. And as we always keep returning back to on this podcast, you know, you can make an argument that's the best kart racer of all time. That to follow in the wake of that, even though it's been like 5 years, I think I was hoping for something that was a little bit newer and more inventive, and it was never going to. It was never going to be the Transform successor that I think a lot of us hope, simply because they were scaling back a lot of the non-Sonic content. And we knew that, you know, we knew that from the very beginning. But Transformed felt kind of like it felt kind of like the zenith of a kart racer and the zenith of that series, and I feel like Team Sonic Racing scales it back, and basically to me it almost feels like, because there's so much content, specifically the tracks that are carried over from the first game, but kind of there are aspects of them that are redesigned, but a lot of the tracks are recycled to a certain degree. It does feel like the first Sonic and Sega Racing, but like kind of seen from a different perspective, a different angle with the team play, which like is a whole nother element that I'm sure we're going to talk about next. But it feels like a familiar title, just tweaked a little bit, which I think and the reason I want to bring up the price is because I think at $40 or £35, I think that's a fair proposition. It's just that I think that we know what Sumo can do, and I kind of wish for this to be a fresh, all-new thing, and it doesn't quite feel like that, which is not to say it's bad. It's just, honestly, it's in some weird place between, like, to me, almost like a remaster and an all-new title. It's almost like a 1.5.
It's actually an interesting point to make, because, I mean, from my experience so far, I do agree with comparisons to the original Sonic Racing, All-Stars Racing, sorry, compared to Transformed, because it does feel a bit scaled back almost because of the kind of layout of the game as well. Like, it comes across like that kind of budget racer, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the Transform seem to have a lot more flair to it, and even just in terms of the content as well, that the tracks here are good and they're fun to play, but like you said, some of them are recycled. But one of the things that really stands out is just how the game does feel like an incremental upgrade to a game that was released in the previous generation, as opposed to, well, Transformers released in the previous generation as well, but like it feels more like a successor to the first game than the second. And we love Transformed. It's like we've said, there is an argument to be made for it to be one of the best kart racers, whereas Team Sonic Racing, it almost feels as if it's going back to its roots almost. It's like, here's a traditional racer, we've bolted a team element on top of it, and that kind of lends itself to that kind of, the mindset of the game is this team racing element. They do offer solo racing, but it just doesn't feel right in terms of the gameplay, so like they're definitely pushing the team aspect of it, but that's also partnered by the fact there's only like 4 teams in the game, and the kind of character roster isn't the strongest. Now, I'm not saying Transformed was, we get fucking Danica Patrick in there, but it just feels like Team Sonic Racing's roster is almost the obvious choices, with Zavok from Lost World thrown in because Sega really seem to love that guy for some reason.
Yeah, is that the guy, because I haven't gotten extremely far, is that the guy who looks kind of like a Incineroar?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, because every time I see him, I don't know whether the Pokemon came first or that character in Sonic came first, but every time I see one or the other, I think that they're the other person. And I think that, like, it's really funny that when you're playing Smash Brothers, Incineroar has the Big the Cat skin, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he does.
So, yeah. So it just like drives the relationship further. But anyway, to bring it back to Team Sonic Racing, yeah, the team element, and I feel like maybe I've been, and the reason I've mostly been doing World Tours because I've had a really busy week and not a ton of time to play, but I feel like the problem with team-based play, and this is something I felt a little bit with Onrush, but not to the same degree as this, because with Onrush there's so much commotion, the teams are so much bigger. But anytime you're dealing with a team style of gameplay and you are playing exclusively with AI, it's never gonna feel like an experience that you have full control over. It's always gonna feel a little bit like you're dealing with some kind of recalcitrant partners, I guess you could say. So yeah, when I'm playing Team Sonic Racing, the first couple races were pretty easy, but I did get the sense that, like, unless I was leading the race, I couldn't expect my teammates to get near the top. and that's just, I mean, that's not a problem exclusive to this game. I feel like that's any game that has a team style of gameplay where you're playing with the AI predominantly and you're not doing multiplayer. You know, even when you're playing a first-person shooter in the story mode, and the Marines that are next to you that are supposed to be helping you are utterly useless and bullet sponges. Like, it just happens. So I think that has something to do with it, but I do actually enjoy some of the ways that they've really made the teams worthwhile. You know, being able to with the I don't know if this is feature exclusive to the Sonic team, but being able to follow behind another one of your teammates' cars, and you get a slipstream, that's really nice. And then when you pass, really cool. You get an extra burst of speed. Those are really cool little elements that help, you know, drive the team play, and I really enjoy that. And then being able to share items with your teammates to build your meter, which I get to a point. It fixes that problem I always have in Mario Kart, where I'm leaving a race and I don't know what to do with all of these item boxes, so I just like burn them and they completely go to waste. But now I can give them to my teammates, and then it goes towards a bigger thing that we can all use. So yeah, it's rethinking certain aspects of the kart racer that we've kind of taken for granted, which I appreciate, because I think it's been a fairly, you know, stale genre. That hasn't changed a ton over the years.
Yeah, exactly, and that's something that Sumo Digital have been trying to do with this series, like, for quite some time. They introduced the All-Star element in the first game, then Transform just turned everything up to 11 with boats and planes thrown in for good measure, and then this one almost feels like, what could we change at a core level that will positively impact the gameplay and isn't too overbearing, because the team element works so well that it just kind of integrates into gameplay. And that's why I was saying that when you play it solo without the teams, you really do realise that they're missing, and that's exactly what Sumo were going for. And like you're saying, all the little gameplay elements they've thrown in, like the slipstream boosts, great idea. I mean, it's one of those ones you think it seems obvious, but somebody implementing it just makes you realise how good an idea it is. And then even if you get hit by items and a kind of one of your teammates drives by, you get like an auto recovery that helps you get back in the race. And I mean, that kind of brings me on to one of the minor complaints I have about the game in terms of how the flow of races work, because when everybody's drifting, going fast, it's great fun. But I feel as if the items are like so cripplingly harsh. So like, when you get hit with an item, it just seems to bring you to a standstill unless you have one of those teammates to kind of give you a pick-me-up and get going again. But when you're playing with solo, you really do see the kind of how slow the game can be at times, and that's something that I never felt Transformed really had a problem with. The items were strong, but they weren't like kind of overpowered and bringing you to a standstill. So it's one of these things I've had to adjust to. It isn't necessarily a negative, but it can really you can basically like ruin a race if you get hit once with an item in the wrong place. It can just start like that kind of snowball effect, much like Mario Kart.
Yeah, I think it doesn't help that the game doesn't feel particularly fast, which, you know, I think was a conscious decision. But it just, the tracks are very wide, it seems a little slow. You know, coming from Mario Kart 8's like 200cc mode, it feels very pedestrian. Again, that's not so much a bad thing, though I wish there was maybe a little bit more... there was kind of a dynamic increase of speed in the game at some point as you're progressing. That's a little bit more profound, because I know there are those upgrades, but they don't seem to make a massive difference in terms of the driving feel. And I guess on that note, you know, the game pretty much feels like, I mean, physics-wise, I haven't played Transform in a while, but it feels like a Sonic Kart Racer again. You know, you got the left trigger as your drift button, and you can just drift forever with it, which I like. It just feels, even just missing that one, or those couple of frames that in Mario Kart you jump into the air before you start the drift, being able to go right into a drift just feels so much smoother, and I think I prefer that. But the funny thing is, like, drifting is so it's so encouraged in this game, especially in some of the event types, that it kind of manifests itself in weird ways. Like, you haven't done the world tour yet, but have you played the event with the where you're trying to drift and get as close to the like the poles as possible? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, yeah, the Daredevil event.
Yeah. So I was doing that, and that was the first event in the career mode where I was like, this is difficult. Like, I'm having a hard time doing this, and I did not expect so quickly to have an issue with the kart racer, in terms of like have my skill tested. But I think first the problem was I didn't realize, for whatever reason, I saw the zones and I was thinking I needed to go through the red zone, and I didn't process I would get more points if I got closer to the pole, even though I know it says that, but like I wasn't fully understanding. So once I got that, I was like, okay, but then I realized, like, oh, if I just tap the L trigger on the straightaway as I'm driving by, then I'll get a bonus of 20 points, even though I'm not really drifting. So I felt like I was kind of gaming the system. But you know, all those years of playing Mario Kart where you would just like snake drift to get a boost, like it just seems like drifting is always used in very weird ways to break the game. And I don't know if it's what they intended or not, but it's just kind of something I thought was funny.
Yeah, I mean, the drifting in the All-Stars games, they've always actually reminded me a lot of Outrun, like the kind of 2006 games. Purely because the way the kind of car moves into the drifts is very reminiscent of those games, minus having to kind of hard brake into them. If you look at the kind of the way the car moves, it is very much like that, and it wouldn't be a surprise given it's Sumo Digital that's developing these games, and that's what it's always reminded me of. And I always wondered if it was like a kind of a conscious design decision, because obviously it was Sega and All Stars Racing at one point, and that was an element they wanted to throw in there. But yeah, the thing about drifting in these games is it's kind of different to Mario Kart, because like you're saying, in Mario Kart you're drifting to get boost and then you exit right back into jumping into another drift, whereas in these games you do get boost from drifting, but it almost feels like it acts more like a normal car in like an arcade sense, of course, where just going into the drift doesn't really give you any speed boost, it just helps you take the corners easier. So having to manage the drifting in tracks is really where the kind of challenge lies, I would say.
Yeah, because it's interesting how the similarity between this and Mario Kart is that, I mean, you know, the fastest way to go is to drift, and you're encouraged to drift, and so you do it a lot, and it feels good. But I think it's interesting that the casino track in this game, which is not very challenging, though when I was doing the Daredevil event, I found it kind of difficult. It has those kind of S's that go into those looped corners, or just kind of like concentric circles. And then that reminded me a lot of Music Park from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, just because, like,
yeah,
the track like visually looks similar. You're like in space, and there's all these things floating, and at times there are no walls, and at times there are. And that track is parts of that track are, I think, pretty challenging. Music Park, and it's almost like you just get to a point when you're drifting in these games where if the corners are laid out and they end up becoming pretty tight and rhythm based, you know, where it's like you have a series of corners that all kind of meld into each other, it can really mess you up if you kind of get one of those corners wrong, and then it ruins you for the rest of the series. And that is something I'm very used to with Outrun. So I totally understand the comparison there, because like I'll often run into situations where it's like I think I got it, and I'll just cut one corner a little bit not enough, like I'll go a little bit wide. It'll just screw me up for the next three, and that's when these games feel really brutal. I guess it kind of plays to the whole aspect of being easy to learn and hard to master, but that's where track memorization is key. And so in all those respects, you know, this feels like one of those kart racers, which is good.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of to be expected almost, especially given that this is Sumo Digital's third game, so they are adding these refinements to the handling model. It just feels like They really do rate the whole drifting without needing to jump into it thing, and it's something that Crash Team Racing kind of amplifies that by 10, because you do these big ridiculous jumps into drifts, which are then partnered by like a boost system where you've got to tap R1 at the end of a meter every time. And I'm not going to lie,
a lot.
that kind of yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Like, that just feels so much overkill to me. So like,
Was that in the original game?
yeah, yes, in the original CTR, it's one of these things that's never really explained as a system, but basically, when you jump into drifts, there's a tiny little bar in the right-hand corner that fills up, and every time it goes full, you're supposed to hit R1 to get a boost. But I've always just felt as if it's so over the top, like, and you can't focus on the racing, because it's something that a lot of the kind of the people who are proper competitive at CTR, and they do exist, like, get really good at it, and like they're really proud of being good at it, which is fine. But to me, it just kind of takes away the racing element of the games, and if there's something that Sumo Digital does right, it's like, and I think I've said this before, I see these games almost more like arcade racers than kart racers, purely because of the way the cars handle. They have a bit of weight to them, and the drifting needs to be done right, whereas in Mario Kart and CTR, it feels like a kart, obviously, because that's what they're going for. That there isn't really a weight to the way you drift or anything, you're just kind of point to point, getting the right amount of kind of torque on the car when you're turning, and using the boosts, or in CTR's case, rapidly tapping R1 like a maniac. But I feel like in Sumo's games, and maybe it's more prevalent in this one because it is a bit slower paced, unless you're like doing some proper high level stuff, you kind of feel the weight of the car, and that's a positive mostly for me. But it is easy to see why sometimes it can feel a bit sluggish, and I think that's something the game struggles from at times.
Yeah, it's interesting that kart racers have I don't know, because like I do get the sense that like there it does feel a little bit more sluggish compared to something like Mario Kart, but I still feel like kart racers kind of have a totally different like understanding of physics and kinetics that compared to normal racing games, and I guess Sonic Team Sonic Racing is a little bit closer to a more typical arcade racer, but then it just makes me appreciate Blur all the more, because that was a kart racer on top of, or a weapons-based kart racer on top of a fairly normal standard arcade racing game, and the physics felt pretty decent in that. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, and this is something that we've kind of alluded to, I think, in previous episodes. I think you actually tweeted about on our account, but I've never totally gotten down with kart racers. Sometimes I can get like addicted to them and fall into, like, I remember when I played the Sonic Racing Transformed, God, that was like a whole weekend. I was in the house with my friends, and we whipped through that game in a matter of like 2 days, doing the story mode of that as a group in multiplayer, and it was so much fun. It was a blast, and we unlocked everything, and I had a great time. But on my own, I don't know if I would have had that same experience. And when I think about Mario Kart 8, I really played it as much as I did, Deluxe specifically, mostly because it was the only semi-racing game I had on my Switch at the time, and I was sick of playing not sick of, but I had like mostly completed Breath of the Wild. I needed to move on to something else, and there wasn't that much that was out. So like, kart racers are usually the games that kind of fill my interest between other more interesting racing games. But at the same time, I'm kind of glad this exists, and I'm glad also that it exists on as many different platforms as it does. We both got the Steam code, and that was day and date release on PC as with all the other consoles, and it's nice to have a decent kart racer on PC. But Brendan, I know you've been able to get your hands on the Switch version as well.
Yeah, so basically, my girlfriend Daniel bought the Switch version of the game, and I've been able to play kind of an hour or so of that. And this is something I wanted to call out on the podcast, because there's something about Switch ports that they either look horribly graphically, have like resolution problems, or just simply don't work as well as they should. But the kind of job Sumo's done on this port is pretty incredible, to be honest, because in terms of graphically, it looks incredibly similar to the PC game, obviously at a slight less, a slight notch down fidelity wise, but it's a locked 30 frames per second pretty much the entire game. People will be sad that it isn't 60, of course, but for the type of game it is, it seems like a fair compromise because they've been able to create a game that looks and plays well, and even though I'm playing on PC at like 144 frames per second, 1080p, whatever, the Switch version is more than worth the £35 asking price, because you're getting a good portable racer that isn't Mario Kart on a Nintendo console.
Was Transformed even 60 frames?
No, so I mean, this is one of these weird ones where Transformed on console was never 60 on any of them, pretty much. It was always 30.
Yeah.
And then that was something I was always kind of sad about, because 60 does add to the gameplay, there's no doubt about that. But when I bought it for PC and then played the game in 60 frames Transformed, because I recently did play through it all the way through S rank as well, a few weeks ago, and the difference was incredible. So I mean, I'm not saying that you should buy the Switch version over the others, because it does run at 30. But if you're looking for something on the Switch that you want to play portably that isn't Mario Kart, but you like a good kart racing story and that type of thing, I really think Sumo have done a good job with the Switch version. And I've seen kind of some of the NPD sales tracking team talking on Twitter about the fact that it looks like in the US at least, the Switch version has actually sold the most.
Yeah, I would expect the Switch version to sell the most worldwide, to be honest. I'm glad that they didn't they didn't kind of just do sort of a half-assed port like a lot of Switch ports have become. Well, actually, it's not fair to say, because Digital Foundry, I feel like every week they have a new story about like this amazing Switch port. Like
yeah, they seem to. I've noticed that myself.
Like what's the one? Well, there's The Witcher, right? That was one of them, and then there was like the Senua's Sacrifice, or whatever the first name of that game is that I'm blanking on. But anyway, a lot of companies have finally tried to start, treating the Switch with respect, even though it's less powerful than other consoles. So I'm glad that Sumo did that here, because the Switch, I feel like, is sort of the spiritual home of this game, and just simply because it's a kart racer, and it is the type of title that you want to have fun, play with friends, would love to take around. It fits that role very well. So yeah, it's good that it plays well on the Switch. As for the PC version, which I've been playing on my PC that I've had now for probably like 2 months, so it's still kind of new to me. It's fine. I mean, I was a little bit surprised that it. I mean, it looks okay. It doesn't look amazing because it's a kart. It's not a kart racer. It's not, I don't know. It's not Metro, but the one issue I had more of a problem with was that I found some frame drops in certain corners, and I have the game running. I have the game running on the highest settings, and I have a 1070, so my computer should be able to handle it. I mean, it handles Forza Horizon 4 pretty much maxed, and at 60 frames anyway. I'm playing everything at 60 frames, but and it will have a consistent frame rate. It will be locked until I might get to a certain corner in a certain track where it will reliably drop in that corner, which signals to me that it's more of a optimization side problem than the fact that my computer can't run it all the time. Not game breaking by any means, but a little bit jarring sometimes and unexpected. But yeah, overall, it's actually I think we forget how much work has been done to bring a lot of this content up to a level that's at right now, because I think Sonic the Hedgehog on Twitter tweeted a GIF or an image of the same track from the first Sonic racing game all those years ago, back in 2010, and a track in this new one, and it's like night and day. And I totally forgot that, wow, that cliffside used to look like this, and the water was a lot less shiny and colorful. And yeah, so the new game, definitely work has been done to improve the quality of the graphics to meet, you know, modern standards for sure.
Yeah, definitely. As I said, I've recently been playing through Transformed as well, and I would say graphically it's pretty much on par with Transformed, which is a testament to Transformed. Really, it's not a negative to Team Sonic Racing, because I think with this type of budget, the type of like kind of it's a Sonic game, like it's always going to kind of look similar anyway. But the fact that you do get that uncapped frame rate is good, because a lot of games like this tend to cap it. I believe Transformed caps you at 60 frames per second, so you can't get above that on PC.
And
Whereas
Transformed
here-
was a beautiful game too when it came out.
Oh, yeah,
It was
definitely.
like 2013, right? And that game looked amazing.
I mean, that was probably Sega's proper attempt at trying to dethrone Mario Kart, not to use any cliches found in loads of articles. It was probably Sega going all in. That's why there were so many licenses there, a lot of marketing deals. Whereas with this game, it's felt very understated. It's just kind of, it's come out, it's great fun, and then maybe through word of mouth it will kind of continuously sell decent. But I mean, Transformed really felt like a more premium product, and I don't have an issue with Team Sonic Racing not being like that, because it still does its job really well, and it's great fun. And the PC version, like you're saying, maybe some slight optimization issues going on, because it is only certain corners, funnily enough, like it isn't across the board.
Yeah,
so you
yeah.
can kind of see that you know when it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and it does make me want to really revisit Transformed, and I remember you telling me recently that, like, oh, you can go on Steam and get it for like, you know, $5 or whatever. It's like
So
it's like
cheap.
nothing. So I was like, yeah, I should pick that up again, because I played through the whole thing on 360 forever ago, and then I think it was a PlayStation Plus title. The Vita version was years ago, and I got that one as well, but never played much of it. But the Vita port of that game is literally like it is the same game. So, just, you know,
Impressive.
a lot of scaling back to fidelity where necessary. But yeah, I mean, you know, we got an amazing, possibly the best ever Sonic Kart racer that we could ever get all those years ago, and this is kind of and you know, that was the second one in Sumo series, and this is kind of a reinterpretation or a new perspective on the first one, which I'm fine with, especially because, as I said, the price is lower. You know, they've made improvements to the graphics and the core gameplay where possible, and you know, the team dynamics are new and interesting and make the online racing more interesting. And you know, I'm fine with it. I would love to see Sumo get free reign to go all out like they were able to with Transformed, and the way that these kinds of dealings and things work. Not one to speculate all that much, but maybe the success of Team Sonic Racing is something that's contingent upon. You know, maybe we will get that real Transform successor or something should this game do well. Maybe it was a way of saying, like, hey, we have all this content, but maybe don't want to invest in a whole new sequel right now, or so you know, we can kind of punch the game up where possible and sort of reuse some of it and create some new stuff and come to this sort of middle ground where we can sell this for a cheaper price, which I think like is going to be very attractive to like parents and kids and stuff like that, because the game is so much cheaper. Because I feel like you don't see that as much today in the console space. When I don't know how it was in the UK, but when I was a kid, there were always games that were coming out as kind of like budget titles for $10 or $20 cheaper, or $30, or like the infamous story
Yeah,
of
it's pretty common.
the infamous story of NFL 2K5, the NFL football game that came out in 2005 from Sega, that was $20 when Madden was $50. And basically like destroyed and was an amazing game, and kind of completely just upended the whole licensed sports landscape at the time, and resulted in this crazy long exclusivity deal between EA and the NFL. So like weird stuff used to happen back then. I feel like it doesn't as much now, but which is why I like to see Team Sonic Racing coming out for is pretty cool to me. and I think I've already seen that you can get for a little bit cheaper if you look in certain places. So definitely give it a try. Unfortunately, it's on every system, so you're bound to have one that you'll be able to play it on.
Team Sonic Racing feels like a game for, it sounds daft, but like for Sonic fans rather than fans of Transform specifically. It almost feels like a partner to Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces. Like Sonic Mania took care of the kind of people who love nostalgia-based games and good games. Sonic Forces for people who like the edgy side of Sonic. And this just feels like the kind of, you've been wanting a spin-off for a while. Here's Team Sonic Racing. And like for me personally, Transform still has it beaten pretty much every corner, but it's like you said, it's almost unfair to compare it to Transformed because that game just executed what it wanted to do perfectly. And if we get a Transform 2, I imagine it would have a higher budget and that type of thing because it is so highly regarded.
Yeah, really what I want to see is Sonic R get brought back.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I am a weirdo. I'm a weirdo who actually kind of likes that game. It's kind of like a laughing stock.
I do too.
Okay, good, because like it's kind of like a laughing stock among fans, and I never really understood why. I mean, like it's got a lot of problems, and the fact that you're running makes it really weird. At least in Sonic's case, but or even in most characters' cases, you're on foot or you're flying. You're not actually in the car. I think Amy is the only one who's in the car. But yeah, that game is so weird, but I love it. Like I don't know. That's a kind of like really strange take on a kart racer that you don't really get anymore. Because there was all the stuff around like, not only was it really strange to control, not only were the tracks designed in a really odd way where you had all these different branching paths, but you had these like gated areas that you can only get through a certain number of rings, and you're also trying to find, I think there were Chaos Emeralds in the track or something like that. You're trying to find those as well. It was quintessential like 90s game design of like, we only have like 6 or 7 tracks in this, so we need to design this game in such a way where you'll need to keep coming back to these tracks to earn all the things to progress to the next level, which is kind of like repetitive, but by today's standards anyway. But I hold a soft spot in my heart for it. It's weird. Oh, and not to keep changing subjects too much, but we do need to talk about Transform soundtrack or Team Sonic Racing soundtrack real quick. But
I'm so glad you said that. I was just about to say, because I was going to say Sonic R soundtrack is legendary.
Yeah, that's what reminded me. Both those games have really great soundtracks.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of Team Sonic Racing soundtrack, I really, really enjoy it. It's good to see Crush 40 back, with Butt Rock and all.
Very, very much so.
Yeah, exactly, and like we even get a remix by the Chemists working with Crush 40. That's like racing games coming home. You've just got the Chemists in a Sonic game. How the hell did that happen?
Yeah, it's such an interesting soundtrack because it's very different than the Did Richard Jacques work on this or not? Because I know he did a lot of stuff.
He did a few songs.
Yeah, he mostly, he pretty much ran Transformed, right? So
he did,
and this has a lot of Jun Senue, has a lot of Crush 40. The Green Light Ride is the intro song, is the theme song, and that reminds me a lot of I mean, like a lot of past Sonic themes for sure, Sonic Adventure, whatnot, but I also got like Daytona USA Circuit Edition Sons of Angels vibes from it. So,
yeah.
So yeah, it's it feels to me, it almost feels like a little bit of an older Sega soundtrack because it's a little bit more guitar driven. I know you're a huge fan because we had our soundtracks episode. It's like the second episode of the show we ever did, and you're a huge fan of Transforms OST, and I like it, but it's a little bit, for whatever reason, it's a little bit too cheesy and upbeat for me, which is why like there are some tracks in this game that are like I was really shocked to hear, and not even when you're racing, like when you're in the world tour and you are selecting your team and your car and modifying your car, there is this really like sort of ambient, low-key, like, song that plays that reminded me a lot of, like, the type of song you would hear customizing your craft in, like, F-Zero GX.
Right.
And totally not at all, like, anything I'd expect from a Sonic game. Sonic games usually, they're very amped, they're very, like, let's go. This is, like, this sort of, like, really, like, quiet, subtle, like, you know, electronic track. And it just, it wasn't what I was expecting, but it's really beautiful and it sounds really good. And yeah, I was just, at so many points I was met with some surprises in the soundtrack that were really encouraging.
Yeah, I think the soundtrack is probably, in my opinion, the strongest point of the game, because they did a fantastic job of bringing in all the different composers, like you're saying, Judson Noise in here, Crush 40, and then Richard Jagg as well, doing a few tracks. But you've even got like Hyper Potions in there, which are like a pretty popular Monster Cat brand, electronic band at the moment.
Yep.
And they did a lot of the kind of trailer music for Sonic Mania. And they've been brought back to do a few tracks. So specifically at the top of my head, I know they done the Rooftop Run remix for Market Street, which is brilliant. And there's even some kind of mashups with Hyper Potions and Crush 40 as well. And then, like I was saying, kind of at the start of this small piece, that they're in the garage screen for whatever reason. They've consulted the chemists to do a remix of Green Light Ride, and
Yeah.
right away when I heard this song, I didn't know it was the chemists, because why would you ever think they'd be involved in a Sonic game? But the sound, I was like, there's something about this that I'm really enjoying, and I'm not sure what it is. It's like a subconscious thing in the back of your head, like, you've heard this beat before, what band does it? And then when I was looking in the credits, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And then they were the chemists in a Sonic racing game, and it is a good remix, to be fair, but placing it in the garage was a really weird choice, because it's this really upbeat, like, cranky song, and you're just kind of changing parts in your car. It feels a bit overstated.
Yeah, it is kind of weird, but I do love that they got the chemists in there. It is a good remix. They remixed Doot Doot Sonic Warrior, which is a great title, but the song from the Japanese theme of Sonic CD they remixed and put in this game. That was really cool.
I mean, the funny part about that one is that it's actually a remix of a remix.
Oh, was that in like, the first Sonic Racing?
It was in Transformed.
Okay.
It's the remix of the Ocean View remix of Sonic Warrior / Super Sonic Racing. Because if you listen to the version of the song in the last lap, it's actually a remix of Super Sonic Racing from Sonic Car. So like, it's one of these weird scenarios, and I think it was Richard Jagg get brought in again to remix his own remix. So it's like, if you listen to the two versions back to back, it's hilarious, because he must have just been like, what can I change this time? Because he went to town and Transformed remixing that song. I'll send you the links across, because it is pretty funny when you hear, like, there's just parts of the song where he must have been like, I need to change this.
Yeah, I find it amazing and really great that, like, Richard Jagg and Sega still have this close relationship that dates back literally to, like, the mid-90s. I mean, like, it's almost been like 30 years, which is insane to think about. But yeah, I was listening to his songs in Sonic R. I was listening to his stuff in MSR. Like, I don't know if Sonic R was that probably wasn't the first title he worked on with Sega. It was probably something earlier than that, but that was the first place I heard him. So for him to continue working on these Sonic racing games is really cool. It's like the thread that kind of runs through all of them.
I mean, and that kind of brings me to a small side point almost, like, just purely because I've been loving finding all these little Easter eggs hidden in the racing games. I made a tweet about this, you might know where I'm going with it. Basically, alongside this and Transformed, I've also been playing Sega Rally Revo, just kind of on and off. And I never connected the dots, but the co-driver in Sega Rally Revo is actually the announcer in Transformed. Like,
yeah,
it's the exact same guy, and it was one of these weird things, because I've played so much of both of those games and never noticed that, so I almost felt as if I let myself down. And then I was looking at what other stuff this guy had done, and it turned out he was also the voice actor for Tony the Tiger in the UK Frosties commercials.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
Oh man, it was just one of those weird, like, totally time extend facts. As soon as I found it out, I was like, this is the type of, like, stuff that we just love finding out, and Yeah, there's a lot of Easter eggs in this game as well, like you're saying. The kind of remixes of some old Sonic songs you wouldn't expect to hear. Um,
And it should be said that they got because I did watch a little bit of Sonic Boom years ago, and they did get the same voice actor, right? Who's been doing, was it Roger? Is it Roger or is it somebody else?
Yeah, I think it's Roger.
Yeah. So the latest voice of Sonic, which I guess is no big deal because I mean there's usually only one guy who voices these characters, but like just the fact that it was. This honestly, you know what? It speaks more to the fact that I am so out of the loop with the Sonic franchise that like I still don't attribute that voice to him because I haven't really played the new Sonic game that wasn't Mania in years. And the thing about Mania is he doesn't talk in Mania, so so yeah, it's you know, it's the story. The story itself is pretty silly, but you know, it's a.
Well, that's what I was going to say. From what I've played of the single player, like I've done a few events, like the first 2 or 3. And even the dialogue in races, like it takes a lot of cues from the Sonic Boom cartoon, I think, because I've actually watched 2 full seasons of that because it's pretty decent, to be honest.
It's not a bad show. Yeah, it's actually somehow it became the best part of the whole Sonic Boom project. Like the games ended up being terrible, but the show was decent.
I really enjoyed it. Like the comedy is very. I mean, it's that type of comedy that is maybe a bit too common nowadays, like very on the nose, kind of self-derogatory, but it pulls it off in a way that I think Sonic fans would appreciate. Like, not to go off too much in a tangent, but the episode where Shadow appears is hilarious because Eggman's just like this Shadow fanboy. And it's just like it's just so ridiculous because when you think of how like hardcore edgy Sonic Adventure 2 story is, and then when you see that episode of Sonic Boom, like it couldn't be any more of a any different essentially. And like,
is Eggman like the surrogate for Sonic fans in that situation?
Yeah, that's it exactly. So like basically anytime like Shadow kind of smoulders or anything, Eggman will just be shit behind him like, oh, he's doing the smolder.
Oh my god, that's great.
Oh, it's brilliant, man. And there's like a big fight with obviously Sonic and Shadow, and because Eggman's just chasing Shadow around, like commentating everything he does, he ends up costing Shadow the fight because like Shadow flies into his ship and then they just fly away or something, and then like Knuckles makes a stupid comment because that's his role in the show. But yeah, you should give that a watch. It's only like a 9-minute episode, of course, because like it's like the old typical cartoon format of 2 episodes per half an hour. But it's really good, and even there's episodes with like Metal Sonic in there as well, and that's pretty good. There's a reference to the Sonic OVA. I'm pretty sure what moment you know that would be.
Oh my god, that's fantastic! I love that movie so much.
Oh,
it's the secret best Sonic film or thing, movie, media, whatever.
I would love to do like a free practice episode on that almost. Just like totally off brand and just discuss why that got what a Sonic movie should be, admittedly in the most campy way possible.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, so this covers Team Sonic Racing, I think, pretty well. Also, we've been talking about this for almost 50 minutes, and I wanted to get some aspect of a grid conversation in. Yeah, so Grid, right? This was pretty surprising. Was there any sort of, I was trying to rack my brain, was there any sort of like leak or hint that this was happening?
Nothing.
Yeah.
It was totally random. Like And then to say it's also coming out this year, like, wow, that
Yeah.
is pretty good work on Codemasters' part. You've got to hand it to them. They did well to keep this a secret.
It makes me really upset I'm not going to be at E3 with through Tom's Guide, because I honestly, I don't really feel like I need to go to E3 at this point because it's not what it was. But now that I know that there's a cool new Codemasters Racer checkout, I kind of wish I was there. But yeah, it's interesting too because it is just called Grid, and it, as I actually learned just before the show, because I had seen the trailer but I hadn't really watched a gameplay video, and just before we started recording I watched a gameplay video and I was like, oh my god, this is like,
it's Grid.
I don't even think yeah, well it's like I don't think it's fair to call it a sequel. I don't even think it's fair. I mean, look, I'm not saying it's just a remaster because like I'm sure it's an all new game, but like the fact that they led with a gameplay video of the San Francisco and Shanghai track, San Francisco being from the first one, Shanghai being from Grid 2, I think.
Yeah.
And the fact that the San Francisco aspect of the video was all muscle cars, which is, I think, like the first race you do in Grid, in the very first Grid. I was checking the title because I was like, did I somehow stumble into a video of the first game of like 2007 Grid? Even the fonts, and I like freaking, because I'm a nerd about this stuff, like the Euro style wide font, like the HUD is exactly the same as it was in the first Grid. So they're really trying to evoke a feeling, and I don't even really mind that kind of content is carried over. Kyle Patrick from GT Planet, who's been on the show before, was tweeting about this earlier in the week, and he said, it's a bit presumptuous and unfair to harp on the fact that some of the content's the same for various reasons, but one of which being, it's been a whole generation. It's been over 10 years since the first Grid.
Exactly.
So, This is a case where I'm actually excited to see those tracks return. But I do think it's an interesting choice that they led with that. It's very, very surprising, and I think has confused a lot of people, for good reason. But I'm sure we'll get to see some new content and some ways the game will differ very soon.
Yeah, I think it was a conscious design decision, but one that maybe slightly backfired, because I think they wanted to basically say, we're going back to our roots with this one. We know what you liked about Grid and we want to try and recreate it. But you could also argue maybe they've recreated it a bit too well for this reveal, because, I mean, the kind of reveal trailer is pretty much just a CG sizzle reel. Like, there's nothing to get from that. People wanted gameplay. And to Codemasters' credit, they did provide gameplay almost immediately. But, it was a bit of a shock to see just how similar the game looked. And to be honest, if this is going to be a reboot that's like a Grid All-Stars, essentially, all the kind of, well, not all the best tracks because there's only 12 locations, but some of the best tracks, and the kind of close racing we know and love, like that's kind of what we want from Grid. That and Raven West, but unfortunately that is a point we might not get.
I don't really understand the obsession with Raven West, by the way.
They're so badass and assholey. Like, just that first game, man, the 1v1 races are so bullshit against them that it's just kind of, it doesn't actually add to the game, but I think it gave the game a bit of personality because there was an evil team, and to see that replaced with the Fernando Alonso challenge, I think that's a bit of a strange choice.
Does Fernando Alonso face his number one nemesis, McLaren?
That's the final boss. You've got to beat McLaren and then qualify for the Indy, and then
for the Indy 500.
That's it. You've completed the game.
Oh my god! Yeah, he's really going everywhere he can except out of McLaren, which is what needs to happen. But I digress. We should have a free practice about like just racing one day.
Yeah, definitely.
That should probably happen.
I think McLaren must have some form of blackmail over Alonso to keep him with them.
Yeah, it's just this. It just seems like this horrible, like, abusive relationship, like this couple that just like has every reason to go their separate ways, but just can't for some reason. They just can't. Like, maybe no one else will love them. I have no idea, but it's really not making anyone look good at this point. But I'm sure they will present Alonso in the best possible light in Grid. So we'll see how that unfolds. It's funny because he's quoted, it's the press release. He's quoted in the press release, and it's just ridiculous to imagine Fernando Alonso talking about this game, even if he got paid to do it, and it really doesn't mean that much.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's just something that exists. It's very peripheral to the experience.
But they do have the the Renault R26 that he won the championship in 2006 with, so that's pretty cool. That's in Grid, and you'll be driving that car, which is probably like the last car that Fernando Alonso ever enjoyed driving in his career.
So it'll be the end of this game, fittingly, probably.
Yeah. I hope that they bring back a lot of the elements of Grid that I really enjoyed, like the team building aspect, which I know I always come on Time Extend and sound like a broken record about the fact that, like, I like it when Codemasters tries to make like some sort of like team oriented thing, and then when they didn't do that in Dirt Rally 2.0, I got really sad. But I hope that they retain that for Grid, which I think they probably will, because Grid's a little bit more of a casual generalist title, general racing title. And I hope that we get to see some callbacks to things like, the first Grid had the license for 24 hours of Le Mans, and you could do that race in the game. And even though it was this totally bastardized version of Le Mans, and the physics of that game didn't really work properly for the track, it was really stunning at the time. The day-night change was beautiful, and the Ego engine back in those days was like a technological tour de force that, like, even like Turn 10 and Polyphony had a hard time eclipsing in certain respects. So yeah, I'd like to see Le Mans return, and yeah, I'm very excited. I've been waiting for this a long time. I think we all have.
Yeah, I think both of us really have been waiting for a new Grid of some capacity, and maybe a reboot's the correct way to go. I am sad to see the old logo disappear, but if this means we get a version of Grid that's suited for the modern platforms, and it kind of reignites the kind of story-based racing or team-based racing that's kind of been missing maybe from the recent efforts, then I'm on board with it. I'm just slightly cautious because I know in recent times Codemasters haven't really prioritised like strong single player elements to their games outside of Formula 1, so I want to see them, because they do have this creative license, they aren't limited to a certain discipline or a certain like kind of overarching body like the FIA. Like, Codemasters have the chance to kind of flaunt a bit here with this game, so I want to see what made their game so special kind of return from the single player element, because Grid just has the drama element of racing down. The AI's always been a bit crazy, the crashes, and like we were saying about Raven West existing, just having that kind of rival. I think that the Nemesis system they're talking about for this game, where if you constantly annoy another driver, they'll try and get some bad karma going your way. I think that could be interesting, specifically because they've said that different drivers react different ways. So if there's a really clean driver that likes racing, he'll just try and basically go out his way to beat you. But if it's guys who are just there to cause chaos and you annoy them, then they're probably going to try and take you out.
Yeah, the Nemesis system's going to be really interesting, and I love that that's kind of become the name for it in like various games. Like I think the Lord of the Rings game that came out a couple of years ago was like had a Nemesis system.
Yeah.
Where, like, you'd fight somebody and then you'd never see them for like another 2 hours, and they just randomly show up and start attacking you. Like, you thought you got me, you thought you killed me, but you were wrong. And I don't know, it's kind of silly. And also, like, we were comparing this in the Grid context, we were comparing it to R Racing Evolution, which is pretty funny to think about. Because that game, obviously, you tried to psych other drivers out by following them at a distance of 4 car lanes, and then they'd randomly spin out. So yeah, I do appreciate that, because it plays into the drama, and it plays into the whole making the game feel bigger than it is, which is pretty cool. But on that note, it's funny because like I was watching the IGN preview of it, or one of their previews, and one of the game directors was there, whose name is escaping me right now, but he's talking about the different elements, the most important elements of the game, and he runs through. He's like, you got, the Nemesis AI, you got realistic crashes, and something else, and just like the beats he was hitting were all the exact same beats as like the original Grid. Like I remember how much they touted the crashes in that game, and the drama of the teams and stuff, and Raven West. So it's like all of the back of the box bullet points that were appropriate for the first title, I feel, are appropriate here. But it's 12 years of difference of not being able to play that game. So I'm more than willing to revisit it now. And also, for what it's worth, we're right on the cusp of Assetto Corsa Competizione coming out. So we have this interesting scenario where it's like two very similar circuit-based racers, one obviously being a full-on simulation and the other one being a lot more casual. So between the two, you're bound to find something that appeals to you. But I think it's funny that those games are kind of taking the stage around the same time. I mean, it'll be a couple months until we see Grid, but still.
Yeah, exactly, and it's an interesting one because like the new Assetto is very much prioritising the driver journey, so to speak, specifically in the GT3 series. And it's something that people who didn't like the original Assetto Corsa kind of felt about that game. It was maybe a bit cold, whereas this game, it's very much trying to kind of harness that racing drama, much like Grid, just in entirely different ways. And of course, Grid has the benefit of being on console as well. I don't think we'll see Competizione on this generation of consoles, but maybe next gen. So I guess they aren't in direct competition in terms of sales, but it's definitely a parallel that we'll be able to draw on.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're two completely different games, but they're both about sports car racing at the core. So that's kind of at the time when we don't get a lot of games that do that. So that's kind of why I associate them, and it's good for everybody, because regardless of whether or not you like to play more realistic simulations or not, you'll get something you'll like, hopefully. But yeah, very excited for a new Grid. As it turns out, my computer is about to die soon, so
wow!
I think this is a good place to end the show. Yeah. So thanks for listening, everybody. You can find us. You can find Time Extend on Twitter. Time_extend. Brendan, you've been doing such amazing work, posting so many weird things I've never known about, like the Sonic Racing announcer who was also Tony the Tiger. That was revealed first on our Twitter, so good job.
Time Extend exclusive.
Yep, getting all the big scoops like we do.
Yeah, exactly. But the Twitter account, we're trying to basically frame it as a companion almost to the podcast. Because this is stuff me and Adam really care about, probably the only people that do. And until we get a blog where we can post some more in-depth thoughts, maybe that could happen in the future. But I mean, at the moment, the Twitter gives us a good excuse to post some bite-sized content, and then you can listen to the podcast for the full shebang. And then also look out on the Twitter account, because we've got a new feature we will be formally announcing pretty soon. This is one that we're actually pretty excited about doing. It's going to highlight games that maybe we don't consider the best, but we know they hold special places in some people's hearts, and that's the kind of games we want to draw attention to. I mean, I think even from our perspective, Adam, we've got a few games that we kind of can't wait to discuss in this format.
Yeah, definitely. We'll finally talk about stuff like Aldo Modelista, which would make a lot of people happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it's basically just finding an excuse to talk about that game. That's
absolutely.
why we created this.
And also, you had started the giveaway for your copy of the Gran Turismo 4 BMW demo disc. That you haven't given that away yet, right?
No, I've not given it away yet. I did say basically we'll be looking to announce the winner of that one when we do our Gran Turismo rankings roundtable, which is happening.
Yeah, there's a lot of people involved
But
with that
I'm just
one,
surprised at the lack of.
Yeah, it's
exactly.
A while.
It's getting everyone together.
But yeah, so definitely go check out the Twitter if you want to get in on that giveaway. It's cool because frankly I didn't even know that there was a Gran Turismo 4 demo disc handed out BMW dealerships where you could drive the new 3 Series, because I lived in America and America is boring. So
I'm surprised at the lack of entrance so far. So if you are listening and you fancy picking that up, because it is a nice piece of merch, be sure to enter. Right now we've only got about 6 entries, which I'm a bit surprised about, but we'll be trying to boost that again at some point soon, try and see if people are interested in winning it. But as it stands just now, you would stand a pretty decent chance if you did get an entry in.
1 in 6. That's why it's good to be a Time XM fan now, because there aren't many of you. So when we do give things away, you stand a really good shot to getting something. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's great at the moment now because we are starting to get loads of engagement on the Twitter. It's good seeing the same faces interacting. It just shows that all this crap we've been talking for 20 episodes now has an audience. I'm also looking forward to seeing your new key art for the podcast as well, Adam. I understand.
Oh yeah, that's gonna.
Cool.
So that goes live with this show. To continue with the theme that I don't know if anyone know this, but every 10 episodes I change up the art. So to honor another classic racer. So
it's
go
almost
enjoy
like
that.
Albums.
Yeah, kind of like albums. You gave them
episodes.
pretty great names, which I like. The first series was Podcast Modelista. So yeah. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you again really soon.
See you next time, guys.